Welcome back to another podcast by me, Rich Martin, and today is a treat. I am with Paul Benger and Nathan Benger, and Paul, along with his wife Jeannie, and Nathan is their son. They run a church with a great team over in Chesterfield in the UK, and the church is called Ikon Church, and alongside that they are part of the Ground Level Network, which Paul and Jeannie are also now the leaders of that network, and we talk about that and the transition in this podcast. And so it's packed full of all sorts, especially if you're building church in a European city that maybe is not transient. Their city is Chesterfield, and they've got other locations in different places as well, but mainly Chesterfield is their main location. It is a city our town without a university, 110,000 people. And it's just fascinating to listen to how they're building church, of how they're doing it with a group of people that what we'd say in the UK, which is salt of the earth people. And it's brilliant. I actually went and recorded this podcast live in person, so we sat in their church around a table, hence why there is no actual video over Zoom with this one if you're watching it. But also there's also hence why Paul starts in the middle of a sentence, and that's because I am not a technician, but I failed to record the first bit of the podcast, and so I essentially introduced who Nathan and Paul were. We had a little bit of back and forth, and then we ended up asking Paul a question about, can you give us the context of how did you get the church built to where you're at now? And so Paul essentially just jumped straight into that question. So thanks for bearing with my technical know-how, which is pretty much zilch. And I hope this blesses you. It certainly blessed me, and it's a great conversation. All right, enjoy.
Yeah, so we felt called to church plant here in Chesterfield, and we've been offered a position somewhere else, and we began to pray and really felt that we should plant the church here with one other person. That was Nathan, who was 1 year of age. So that was 37 years ago, and I was 22, I think. Jeannie was 21, and we had no idea what we were doing. And so we went to we were part of a movement. We went to that movement.
Which movement?
It was Assemblies of God.
Okay.
And we went to the Assemblies of God and said, look, we just feel called to church plant, and we don't know what we're doing. We just need somebody who can help us, guide us through the process. What should we be doing? The person who was leading the region actually said, I don't know anyone who could help you.
Oh, what a shame. It's very different now, we know, with the energy.
Yes. Oh, yeah, totally. And I'm not casting any shade.
No.
I'm just trying to tell the story, really. So we then knew of another movement, Ground Level, led by Stuart Bell, over in Lincoln.
Yeah.
So I asked to go and see him, and I said exactly the same thing. I'm 22, my wife's 21, or 23, 22, whatever ages we were. We have no idea what we're doing, which is unusual for a 22-year-old to say that.
That is very
Normally
unusual.
at 22, you think, I know exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, I can tell everybody else how to do it. But we said, we don't know what we're doing, but we just need some support, some help. We know that. Stuart's response was completely different. He said, well, I don't think we know what we're doing, but why don't we learn together?
Oh, what a great response.
And I sold. So that was it. Joined Ground Level as a network from day one, and then our journey has been 37 years of planting church, building church. We did have a period about 14 years in where we felt we had to change the culture of the church. We didn't like it. We didn't like the church that we built, and we had massive decline. But then since that period, that was over a 5-year period, but then since that period, our church has continued to move forward, with ups and downs, of course, and perhaps we'll hear about some of them as we go on.
Wow.
And we, I thought I'd just share about why Ikon Church, because I guess quite a few people will think, why Ikon? Ikon is spelled I-K-O-N.
Yeah.
And so we were at somewhere, I can't remember now, Peterborough, I think. We were in Peterborough, and we were thinking, did we change the name of the church? Church was called Christian Life Church.
Yep.
Back then, did we change the name of it? And our vision is human flourishing, so we want people to live their best life.
Nice.
And we ultimately believe people live their best life in relationship with Jesus. And so we want to be those image bearers. And so the Greek word is icon with an E on the front, but the E would mean nothing to the world. So we just dropped the E
Yeah. It's much more cool with
Yeah,
that.
you say that. Yeah.
Unless you're in Greece.
Unless you're in Greece. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was part of the journey as well of becoming Ikon Church.
Yeah.
And so now, I know we've skipped through so much there. It's just so the listeners can fully grasp it. Now, Ikon Church is not just in Chesterfield.
No, got 3 campuses and obviously online, as many churches are online as well. So we're in Chesterfield, we're in Sheffield, we're in Stocksbridge. We've got Connect small group in Derby, which we did have a campus in Derby, and we're hoping to relaunch that at some time in the future. But that's where we are. So three campuses and a few other things going on as well.
And those campuses run centrally from the kind of sending church here in Chesterfield.
Yes, everything's sort of filters into one. There's some stuff that they obviously have autonomy over, but everything is owned by the central, Ikon Church. We're all one church. I don't like to say central because we're all part of the same thing. It almost they feel secondary if you say central.
Okay, nice.
So it's they're equal.
Yeah,
all the campuses are equal. It's just that because we planted in Chesterfield first, this is way larger and more stable, viable, has a lot more resources, perhaps, than those other campuses.
Yeah, amazing.
But our mentality is it's all equal, it's all one.
Great. And I've met some of the team as well just when I came in today, and great team around you. Talk to me about, I know COVID is the kind of like long gone 4 years ago issue, right? That we still try to pin a lot on, but the reality is it's moved, it's gone. But it's left its mark, right? It's like it's left its mark in the nation. It's left its mark around the whole world. Talk to me about what your church looked like, especially culture-wise, pre-COVID, and now, post-COVID. How's that worked itself out? And the reason I'm asking this question is there are people that I've chatted to a lot who talk about this post-COVID church world. We hear a lot from American kind of podcasts or American documents that end up coming out that say these are the statistics around things. But what's it actually like on the ground, and what have you actually found out here in Europe of what was the church like before and what was like easy or didn't work, and what's the church like now that maybe is easy and doesn't work?
Well, we had 5 campuses.
Okay.
And now we've got 3.
COVID got 2.
Well, we had 3.
3, yes.
And then we merged with a church during COVID.
Lockdown day.
The day of lockdown
was our merger day.
So we went from 3 to 5, and now we're back to 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I would say pre-COVID, some of the big differences was a lot of momentum in church, volunteerism very high, really high, and we were in a good season, great season moving forward. We were merging, obviously, and launching 2 new campuses as part of Ikon Church. And so that we were doing 4 services in Chesterfield, which, because we count our Friday night youth service as a service.
Yeah, great.
So we were doing 3 on a Sunday. We were doing 2 back-to-backs in the morning and then 1 at night. We now only do 2 on a Sunday. We still do Friday nights, but we only do 2 on a Sunday morning and evening. And part of that was because of the numbers weren't as strong when we came back, and the team. And I'd be honest and say nobody, including myself, wants to go back to 3 on a Sunday.
Right.
They're like, and I don't know what that is, because I had no problem with it pre-COVID, but I do now.
Right.
Now I'd do it if we had to.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what about you?
Yeah, I would say as well, probably people have become less regular in attendance.
Okay.
So whereas you had your people who you could pretty much rely on, 3 out of 4, they're there. Now that's become less regular. In that, I think also a lot of people, they don't want to miss out on things. So I think in the COVID era, people felt like they missed out on a lot. So it's like, well, I don't want to miss out on that. That's happening, so I don't want to miss out on that. So I'll go there. So I think that's been part of it as well. But I think one of the great things that has happened and through that journey is that we had this focus on discipleship, which I think a lot of the church did.
Right.
And we were able to shore up, what does that look like for us as Ikon Church? Created a website, followjesus.uk.
Oh, wow.
Which we
During lockdown?
Yeah, and that period. And really just for our church, here's some practices, what it means for us as Ikon Church. What does it look like for us to follow Jesus?
Wow.
We had an incredible staff retreat, actually, where we like to give our staff retreat a purpose. And so we were allowed to meet. And so we had a staff retreat during those years where we asked the question, what does it mean to follow Jesus at Ikon Church? So,
Great question.
And we came up with 5 things. I think I've got them. We pray, we read the Bible, we gather, we play our part, and we build relationships. And so we built this website around those five areas to try and give people resources in those areas. Since then, I think we've done even more things around spiritual disciplines, spiritual gifts. We're currently in a series on spiritual gifts, doing really big deep dive into that. So
would you want to go back to church pre-COVID, or do you think that what's happened in the last 4 years is healthier? I'm digging around a little bit here because what you described pre-COVID was, up and to the right. Church was absolutely flourishing. People would drop of a hat, get involved. There was, volunteers, not a plenty, but definitely a whole lot more. Now, it's not that you're struggling, far from it, but it's just a different setup. Are you saying that, are you glad for what's gone on? Obviously not the bad side of COVID, but are you glad for the journey of, you're talking about discipleship? Has it shifted you into some gears that maybe you wouldn't have got into without that?
I think I wouldn't want to go back without the deepening. I think we'd all love the up and to the right and the momentum, etc. And we've got momentum now, so we're not saying we haven't, but it's not like it was.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go back to that.
Yeah.
More decisions, more baptisms, and more new people coming into church. But I wouldn't want to go back without the deepening, because what I'm finding with that is that that's ongoing. That started in COVID. We began to think a different way, but we're still thinking a different way now. And so I think there's a discovery of new things and richness. Yeah.
And what I would say is our church looks very different. So pre-COVID to post-COVID are very different in the sense of people. So a lot of people, left, went to other churches, did other things, whatever. We've now got a new group of people, and it's been amazing to help them in terms of that discipleship and that growing and that, I guess we use the word health. I wouldn't say we weren't healthy before, but it's just become more of that discipleship. Following Jesus has become, more of the priority for us as Ikon Church.
Yeah. And I think, the story where Jesus prunes the tree and he tells that story, the pruning that's happened. And I think we'd all agree that COVID period for this nation especially, and I know it's happened around the world, but has been like a pruning time for the church. And I feel like now there's this, like when you do prune a garden tree back, you get these fresh shoots after X amount of time. It does feel like, and he's seeing these fresh shoots coming through, and people, hearing of these amazing stories of, that what's happening with the students on campuses and people telling people about Jesus in this country is just mind-blowing to see. I was at the Royal Albert Hall at the HTB conference earlier last month or in May, and to see what God was doing there with leaders. The last session, these leaders were in the hall repenting out loud, shouting out their sins and repenting, whilst 5,000 other people are listening.
Yeah.
And then someone else would repent and shout out. I was like, this is mad that this is going on. This wasn't happening 3, 4, 5 years ago. It just wasn't in the DNA of what we're doing as a church, public repentance from leaders type feel. But there's these new shoots. Are you seeing that across the network that you're running with the ground level?
Yeah, I think that's another, that contending for a move of God. I think in terms of, I think there was a lot of revival language pre-COVID, but actually leaning in and contending more. I mean, one of the things we've seen develop here has been prayer. We always had a philosophy that prayer was almost a seam, not a big thing, but like a seam that we put through everything. But that leaning in to prayer and having prayer ministry and having different things happening, and we're seeing that across our network as well. Yeah, just that hunger and that thirst. In fact, we've got our big event coming up the end of next month, Awaken Showground, and so much of the seminar program, which we don't set, we actually ask people to lead certain areas, but so much of it is coming back on this theme of leaning into God, contending for God's presence and power, a move of God in our nation. And that's come from different people. It's not something we've set as a theme, go for this, but yeah, well, I'm just seeing that.
Yeah, come about. Talk to us about, in 2012, it seems a long time ago. I mean, the Olympics were in the UK in 2012. But in 2012, you were asked, or how did it come about, of merging two churches and then merging those churches into one? I mean, that's like 3 mergers. That's an acquisition deal that is complex. What was that about, and how did it come about, and what did it look like?
It came about because the pastor of the other church I'd kind of supported, coached, mentored, whatever word you want to use, for quite a bit of time. Over the years, we would meet up 3-4 times a year, and I'd just be there. I'd listen. We'd talk through stuff. So there was a long history of years of doing that, and there was a little bit of restlessness then in that situation. The other situation is, where do we go next? Where do I go next? Where do we go next? And so we started the potential merger conversation. Of course, it's quite popular, and it was quite on the radar for America, and
it was,
and things like that. Multisite, obviously, we were already multisite, so we began that conversation, and both felt that it was right to do. We've had other churches approach us to become Ikon, where we've talked, we've opened the door to conversation, but then said, no, this wouldn't be the right thing for you. It wouldn't be the right thing for us. So we didn't do it because we wanted to build an empire. You've got to know that this is something God wants you to do.
Right.
And so I think we took it seriously and got to that place. So that's how it came about, really, just through those conversations. We began to have conversations with leadership teams and trustees of both organizations. They came on board. And then all I would say as a headline, I feel like the process, we did really well. We were thorough, we were clear what this means, what this looks like, and we did the process really well, leading up to March, whatever it was, 2020, when we merged on COVID Sunday.
Yeah, so it was meant to be Easter Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously COVID came about, and it was kind of like we were doing online church, as everyone did, and just the conversation was, so why would we both do online church when we know this is coming on Easter Sunday? The church know it's coming, so let's just do it now. Let's just do the merge now in that moment.
Wow. And this church they'd already merged with another church already?
Yes. Yeah, so they had 2 campuses. So the pastor of the church had been offered another pastorate, and he put the idea to them. This was a few years before. Put the idea to them. Why don't I pastor both churches? And why don't we come together? So they'd come. So they'd already been through the whole merger process, which I think helped us do it really well, because we could learn from that and to be thorough in the steps. Their side, obviously, trustees and leaders were familiar with the process, having done it. I think it was 5 years before.
Okay.
And so we took on another church that had 2 campuses.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so fast forward now, what's that? 10 plus years. How's it gone?
Yeah, it was 2020 the merger. So it's.
Oh, I thought it was 2012.
Yeah,
2020.
No, 2020.
Oh gosh, sorry, because 2012 was the
COVID.
Olympics. So that's
yeah.
Look at me. So we're talking. Sorry, 2020 was COVID. So we're talking. How's it gone?
So okay, good and bad, I would say, in terms of, I think we did the merger really well. And I think
as in the practicals.
practical, getting through the thing. I think COVID actually helped us in that first few years because we were online. Every campus was getting the same material,
Okay.
so we couldn't be five separate things. We
Right.
had to be one.
Yeah.
We were all one, so it was the same worship, same teaching, same information, and that helped us build relationships with people.
Okay.
You know, very, very quickly. I think when we gone back into services, I think then what you discover, you've got to build team again on the ground, and of course everyone's challenged with that. You've also got the whole culture, how you fit the whole culture. It enabled us to bring some new staff on.
Okay.
So campus pastors for, at that time, Stocksbridge and Rotherham. And then a couple of years in, we decided Rotherham, which was the weaker of the two campuses, that we would try and merge Rotherham with Sheffield.
Okay.
And that was a disaster. And
Why?
I'll tell you why it's a disaster, because you live in Rotherham, you don't travel to Sheffield.
Okay. This tribal mentality.
Oh, man. I should have known, because we're in a former mining area here, and you can live in one village and a mile away can be another village, and you just won't go to that village.
Yeah.
You know, people of a certain generation, let's say. So you've got that tribal mentality. And so the people in Rotherham, we're
talking, just so people know, how many miles difference?
I don't know, 10,
If 10.
not 10 miles, but
No.
even 10, 15 minutes
Yeah.
travel. We had people in Rotherham who were closer to our Sheffield campus than Rotherham campus, but they wouldn't.
We wouldn't go.
Yeah.
But and the reason I'm pausing there is not to make you relive the pain.
Okay.
It's more the fact of like it is quite significant because people, look at a map of the UK where should we plant the church, kind of like style type thing. But the reality is the tribalism, unless that's like taken into account, unless people realize you can't, they're very, very different. And for whatever reason, the church is not going to change that.
No.
It's not our job to try change culture. It's the old Chinese missionaries that would go over to China. They first originally went with all their candlesticks from England and all their robes, and I forget who the most famous one was. The most famous Chinese missionary, Hudson Taylor, who then basically said, right, I'm going to grow my hair. I'm going to wear what the Chinese wear. Like, I don't need to change this culture. I just need to adapt it and bring it in and bring the gospel. Whether it's a candlestick from England that's come by boat or whether it's some Chinese joss stick that you might have got hold of, it doesn't really matter. Let's just bring the gospel as best as we can.
Yeah. And I think in the West, I didn't. So I'll blame myself. I didn't put enough value on that.
Because it's 15-minute drive.
Yeah. 15, 20-minute drive, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think as well, just picking up on the campus thing, I think we have to realise that building team and building culture takes time. Probably takes longer than you realise, especially in a merger where, for us, the cultures of both churches weren't miles apart, but there's just the little things, and that just takes time. And even, and you can even see that, in terms of we're one church, we're all together, so it has a similar feel, smell, everything. You come to Chesterfield, you go to Stocksbridge, whilst there might be different sizes, they want to feel, be the same. It wants to be Ikon Church, and that takes time. But I think during that COVID season, one of the real advantages for campus pastors was your one focus was relationship building.
Great.
yeah.
With the people in your church. So you weren't thinking, I've got a message to prepare, I've got a service to try and make sure everything's sorted for, I've got to make sure teams are sorted, I've got all this other stuff. No, it was like the focus is I'm building relationship. And I think that was a big win for us. And I think going forward, if we were to do campuses in the future, we're even thinking about Derby and relaunching that, the focus would be not on that other stuff. It would be, let's build the relationships first. That's the key.
It's really special. How have you found that you're not in a metropolitan district where you've got turnover of lots of students, or you've got huge high turnover of business coming through, say, a Birmingham or a Manchester or a London, where you have this huge, driven amount of people that are coming through these areas all the time, which then just brings this volunteerism or brings this ability for new people to get involved all the time. How have you kind of gone about building volunteer teams with people who live, breathe, eat Chesterfield and their kids most likely will, and they're going to be here in 30 years time type feel?
Yeah, well, I think one we've sought to build community in terms of the church, and I know every church says that, but we put a strong emphasis on community and relationships, I feel. So, we do have hundreds of people that are in small groups, and, a higher percentage than I think would be national. But also, just in terms of our teaching, we're very clear about playing our part. That's why that's one of this is how we follow Jesus. We play our part.
Nice.
That actually we don't just turn up at church. And of course, some people are always going to do this. We don't just turn up at church, get fed, or we don't come for a service we enjoy. We're actually a part of this.
Nice.
So we try and emphasize this. I love the language. We don't use it enough, but years ago when I was in Bible school, I had a lecturer, and he said to me they used to do like welcome meetings for new people. And he used to say in the welcome meetings, I would ask the people the question, is God joining you to us?
Oh, wow. Nice question.
And I think because we've got an emphasis on that, even unsaid sometimes, we are looking for people that we feel, they belong. Most churches have a "you belong here" sign, but I'm not sure they all believe it.
Yeah.
But that whole sense of belonging is not just a place where you can be welcomed. It's actually where you belong.
Wow.
You're actually a part.
That's such a nice phrase that I'm going to steal and take back to the church plant we're doing, because it's not for everyone. And we don't need to be for everyone. I know we've got open arms and we're going to welcome everyone. Like you say, anyone can come through the doors, but ultimately there is a drawing and a joining that is special, and a gift to look out for, a gift to know what to nurture, a gift to just say, hey, God, if it's right, let it be, and to see who God's bringing into your community is special.
I think as well, one of the big wins for us has been investing in the next generation. So, like Paul said earlier, youth is counted as a service, so it never feels separate.
Nice.
It's not just its own thing, doing its own thing. It's part of it. We count it in. We'll have like a dashboard of, and numbers, new decisions, and we're doing that. We're celebrating young people all the time, and doing that. Kids, we want to invest in that, and also part of that is not just invest in, some of those will go away, and we're believing they'll be part of churches and get planted. But even in young people's lives, we're saying, is God calling you to this vision at Ikon Church? So can you, we haven't got a university, but, can you study Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, close by, where you believe this is where God's planted me?
Great.
This is where God's planted me, and got a real investment in that. And so many of our leaders now in church have come through youth, been invested in, grown, now have young families, all growing in church.
Amazing.
And it's amazing. And so that's been a real plus for us. And also them parents, grandparents, they all see that.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, such a strong culture of kids and youth.
For many years, we just had, when kids got to university age, they'd just go and we wouldn't see them. And so we've been able to build that, but that's come from a real, I feel like a genuine, as not just seeing them as the future church, but the church now. So we have young people serving in all kinds of different areas in church, give them strong responsibility.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so special, and it's obviously evident, being here in the church today and seeing it. What, Nathan, your role was, you were pastoring in Derby. Talk me through what's
Yeah.
that journey there before, Paul, you give me your title of it. But
Yeah.
what's
So I was youth pastor with Debbie. We were still youth pastor at that time. We launched Derby with like midweek services. Just felt real calling to Derby. Derby is obviously like the capital of Derbyshire.
Yeah.
We're Chesterfield's in Derbyshire, though we're closer to Sheffield than Derby.
And Derby's what, half an hour away?
35 to 40 minutes
Yeah.
away. So we used to take a team Wednesdays full of youth and young adults, run a service, and it was really like successful in terms of, and it's how you define success.
Yeah.
But we used to gather a really good crowd on a Wednesday. But what it became for a lot of those guys who came in was just like a supplement service.
Okay.
So they'd be in church and it'd be a supplement service. So we realized, probably about 6 months in, we need to start Sundays. So we went a year in. We went to Sundays, took a team from Chesterfield, 20 odd people from
Wow.
Chesterfield, had to send some back very quickly because we realized, hold on, Chesterfield need them. Some things are falling down
Okay.
in Chesterfield, so they need to go back.
I remember texting him during one service and saying, that person's coming back next week. You can't have them anymore. It's a disaster here.
So, but again, that's a learning.
Yeah.
We learned through that. So yeah, we launched there, and it began to grow, began to develop, building team,
Yeah.
people from Derby becoming part of it, and so yeah, it's on a real good trajectory. And then unfortunately, Dad got like seriously ill, was in intensive care.
Oh, Paul,
Mum-
I didn't know.
My mum got told
2017.
4 times that he would not live. Had a heart disease.
Well, yeah, a disease that affected
Yeah, that's it.
all my vital organs.
Gosh.
And so, Jeannie was told 4 times that I would die, go to sleep and die. Apparently they told me, but I can't remember because the drugs were so good.
You were already in 7th.
I was somewhere else anyway, yeah.
So after that, I came out, and obviously there was the process of regaining strength.
Right.
I mean, the miracle is
Yeah, he's
like
still
his
here.
heart was at what function?
When I was really ill in hospital, it went down to 13%. And I had a miracle. And after I came out, my heart got a little bit stronger, so I could come home eventually. And they gave me a heart nurse who I meant to visit every month. And they said, you'll have a heart nurse now for life. I said to her, when a heart's been this damaged, how long does it take to recover? She said, it never recovers. That's why you've got me for life. Well, I haven't got her now.
Come on.
Because 1 year later, my consultant wrote in my notes, Paul's heart is now functioning at 100%.
Oh, Paul, praise
Which
God.
is incredible. It's an incredible story. It's a long story, but it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Wow.
Some really...
And so you were out of action for how long?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, full action a long time.
Okay.
Because even when I came out of hospital, like, if I did one thing,
You'd be wiped for
I'd totally wiped out. I mean, I would look at my diary when I came back to work. I probably came back a little bit early, but I would see there's 3 things in. And I would think, how does anybody do 3 things in one day?
Wow. Wow.
And they weren't heavy things, or
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I was,
yeah,
but it was, yeah.
Wow.
So Nathan and Debbie, we had to, I think so. I always think it's selfishly, but I'd forgotten it was on the back of my illness, really. We needed them back, really, to lean on them.
And so you ended up...
So we came back and transitioned that to, a great young couple, but it was like bivocational time, and so they led it for a time, and again, just the issue of building team from people there.
Yeah.
When we came back, from that 20, I guess when we came back, there was around 15 or so who were still there. A lot of those started to filter back to Chesterfield.
Okay.
In that time.
Which happens in transition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So they filtered back into Chesterfield, which then meant they were trying to build team. COVID came.
I want to say that couple
Yeah.
did a good job.
Yes.
They did. they did a good job. They were struggling with the fact of obviously the team was depleting a little bit with transition, but they did a really good job. And then when COVID came, they both got new jobs and physically needed to move. They actually ended up living near Sheffield.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're still with us now.
Yeah.
So they're still part of our church, but they couldn't lead Derby. And so you pick up the story from there.
So then we put in another couple, and I guess again, some of the culture stuff didn't quite fit in terms of that, and just began to deplete. And then they decided it wasn't for them, and so we were left with, what do we do? So now it's running, a few midweek cadet groups at the moment. In me, if I'm honest, there's a little bit of like, well, hold on, I started this, so there's a bit of disappointment
it's like
there.
Your little baby.
Yeah, but then also within me, but now we can go again. Yeah, and we can see it. We can see it flourish, and we
may go differently though.
Yeah,
we may start really simple.
Yeah,
like people talk micro church, and I guess some of the listeners would understand that. We may even start with that philosophy and model.
Yeah,
in Derby, we've got a young couple that are interested, that we're talking with them. They've been on a bit of a learning journey, and I think that might be a way to just relaunch into that city really.
So less of the pressure on let's send a team,
let's have a big
and more
service.
of a let's build relationship, a little bit like what we're able to do in COVID.
Yeah,
let's build relationship, let's build the team on the ground, and then when that's ready, then we could launch into services.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. I didn't know that was the journey. And Paul, firstly, glad that you're still here. That's
Me too.
A benefit for all sorts, but definitely for the kingdom. And I love those stories of where God does bring healing because there's a purpose attached to it.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate healing is we're all off to heaven at some point.
Yeah.
But whilst we're still here, it's for a purpose. And I think it's really special that...
And that's down to his sovereignty, isn't it? He decides who he heals.
Right.
And I think we should believe for everyone to be healed.
Yeah.
But not everyone is going to be healed.
Yeah.
That's down to God.
Yeah. And he
and thankfully he chose to heal me.
Yeah. And also hearing what you've done with Derby as well is nice, because I think sometimes we only ever hear the success side of a plant and the success side of the stuff that you've done. And so everyone who's then on what you've just described, everyone's sat thinking, oh, right, like I'm not part. And it's not because they're not good leaders. It's because actually, planting a church is very, very difficult, hard work. And because of tribalism and because of the people groups that we're building with and because of things like COVID or things like young leaders or whatever it might be, it's so uniquely different in each situation. And I think the fact that you're going to go again and in some way, shape or format is something that would be encouraging for others to watch, others to look at, others to be able to monitor in a good way, to be able to go, hey, like you can go again just because it was failure on one front, which is it didn't succeed, like the Chester campus and up and to the right. It's not failure because there's still embers there. There's still a passion and desire to go reach people. There's still a need. There's still seed on the ground, hey, that is yet to come good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. So when we decided we weren't going to just try and push people in, we just said to everyone, this is what we'll do. We'll facilitate and look after people. Anybody that wants to stay within Ikon Church, we'll care for you. We'll make sure there's small groups for you. But if you want Sunday services, Chesterfield, you can come to Chesterfield, but we know it's probably too far. But there's lots of good churches in the city, fine good churches in the city, and so we released people.
Great,
really to do that.
So special.
Yeah,
so special. Paul, you are the leader of a larger network now in the UK called Ground Level. You alluded to it at the beginning. Stuart Bell, the founding leader, and Irene, his wife. What's how's that transition gone? Because Stuart he's a general in the faith, really, isn't he? I know you can only say that about people once they're dead.
That's true.
But he's a general in the faith. He's done so much around the UK and beyond. and faithfully stood his ground. And there's, I think, is it 50 plus churches in the network?
80 churches now. We've got 80 churches in
Look,
the
all my
network.
facts are wrong today. 2012 you took over
Yeah,
church
yeah.
and 50
Don't worry.
churches. Look
Don't
at that, eh?
worry. Yeah.
I'm on the wrong Wikipedia.
Yeah. We got 5 more joining this year as well.
Wow.
So we're on a nice little growth spurt as a network.
Yeah, how's that transition gone from someone who's so loved and so respected to then be able to come in? And I know he's still really involved, he's the founding leader, but in terms of the day-to-day movement kind of direction, that now sits more predominantly with you.
Yeah.
How's that transition gone?
Well, I'll say 2 things. First of all, I want to say that Stuart and Irene, post-transition, I would say, have been, my word I'd like to use, they've done that perfectly.
Amazing.
They've supported me in that, in my role, when I've been in meetings and I've been sharing ideas, and there's been little bits of questioning. They've just thrown their weight behind, this is what Paul feels, let's go for it. Let's support that. So they have been perfect. Post-transition, leading up to the transition, I think the whole idea of transition was difficult. All transitions, including good ones, and this was a good one, are difficult. They're all difficult. And I think because it's something that they founded, and obviously they'd led and they cared about massively, they were very thorough on the transition process. I laugh because I think of some of the meetings and the questions Jeannie and I were asked, which were surprised us and shocked us. Probably I couldn't share them, but they were very thorough in that process, and they were meticulous at taking the time. The process was clear. It got scuppered slightly by COVID, so it should have happened. Many people forget this. It should have happened a year earlier than it did.
Okay.
But COVID kind of delayed us a year. But that said, I think we went through a meticulous process. We had other people, not just ourselves and Stuart and Irene. We had 2 of the directors of ground level involved at every stage of that process, every meeting that we had. So we did it. They needed to be certain, that Jeannie and I were the right people. Even though we'd worked with them, I mean, I all those years, and I'd worked for ground level for 15, 16 years at that time. And also I'd done some work with a live church for a 10-year period.
Which is Stuart's
church. Home church, that he still leads. He's now begun a transition in a live church. But, so the process was thorough, meticulous at times. If I'm honest, I found it challenging in the process. Yeah. But I'm sure they did too. We never fell out. We've never fell out in 37 years.
That's incredible.
We've disagreed. We've never raised our voices to each other. We've disagreed on things, but we've got a good relationship. I have the highest respect for them, and I think that helped. One of the things I really wanted was them to be happy in that season of their ministry when they were handing things on, giving things away, because that is a very difficult moment, I think, for any leader. So, yeah.
And what would if someone is listening going through a version of transition and they're on the position that you're in, which is they're receiving, what would your kind of top 2 or 3 things be in when you're a receiver?
So I think you've got to know it's what God wants. That would be the first thing. I think that kept us going longer than if it was just our ego and our feelings. Okay. I think we'd have just slipped out and said, this is for somebody else. Okay. Not with we wouldn't have done any drama or anything, but it'd just be, this probably is not for us, but having a sense this is what God wants is important. Honoring is very important. I think we're called to honor. Scripture talks about familial relationship, doesn't it? Honor your father and mother. I think honoring in the right way, and just respecting somebody else's position and authority. Nice. And I think the third thing is try to understand what they're going through. I had the fortunate position of having studied transitions. I actually had to study transitions pre-ministry.
Oh, wow.
And I came across the best book by far is a book by a guy called William Bridges. I think it's called Managing Change. And he talks about stages of transition.
Wow.
Like, I've read all the Christian books on transition.
Yeah.
This book is about, and I still had it. I think it might even be on these bookshelves here somewhere.
It's
And,
not a Christian book.
It's not a Christian book. It's a secular book. It's about, I think it's in maybe its 10th edition now.
Okay, wow.
So it's still massive. And that helped me understand what they were going through.
Great.
So sometimes when certain questions were asked or certain things that I'd done were questioned directly, I realized where it was coming from. We could have, Jeannie and I could have easily thought, don't they trust us? So,
Right.
But
Right.
actually it's coming from somewhere that had helped me. So I think you've got to get an understanding of what the other person is feeling.
Wow.
Walk a mile in their shoes.
Yeah.
And then I think you can understand the process a little bit better. But some things I would say about the process be absolute clarity. Don't move dates.
Nice.
If you set a date,
Stick to it.
stick to it. Don't move dates. Don't fudge it. Don't just say, you could be leading this thing in a year's time. No,
Give me a date.
give me a date. 28th of March.
Yeah.
You're going to be leading this.
Great.
And don't shift on those things, because the doubts and the questions that flood in
Wow.
when something you thought was happening in a time scale doesn't happen in a time scale. I knew that the whole shift, the thing that had to shift because of COVID, but the struggle I had with that was immense.
Wow.
And that was nobody's fault, but because we'd set dates and then it didn't happen on those dates.
There's so many people involved.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not just 1-2 people. There's so many parties involved. Never mind 50 churches, 80 churches that are leaning in and curious about what's going on as well. Highly curious, I suspect. So amazing.
And Stuart was very good at that, in the sense that this is what we used to have markers, like our leaders conference. This is what will happen by that leaders conference.
Okay, nice.
And so on. So we had all that. And
Wow.
so other than the year shift, we did that really well.
Wow. Do you enjoy watching your dad, Paul, go through this?
Yeah, I guess I got to see a lot of that. And, even now I'm on the ground level team and I get to see Stuart and Irene in that setting, really, so supportive and so behind what mum and dad are doing, which is really, really great. I also think on the flip side, I think it's been good for us as a church.
Right.
Because it's enabled us again to think bigger in terms of churches, but also to think on a different scale of, I would say sometimes you stick around with people who are like you.
Right.
In ground level, there's lots of churches who are very different. You get different flavors, you get different styles, you get different bendings, and being able to embrace all of that.
So good.
And I'm super competitive, play football, not seeing anything in a competitive way, or we're better than you, or no, how can we help each other?
Wow.
And even thinking around, some of that thinking. I know we've even done, a staff day with a live church who are multisite again.
Yeah.
They're thinking on multisite, it's different to ours, but it's like, what can we learn?
Yeah, great.
What can we glean? And so I think it's been good for us as a church as well. It's given us even a bigger perspective.
Right.
Here, we're in a town, Chesterfield, 110,000 people, but it gives us a bigger perspective of what could the nation look like. And we've even now got churches connected with a ground level in Spain and America as well.
Oh, try and get Barbados, Paul. Or Hawaii. I don't mind.
He makes sure he's looking after the ones in Spain.
I'm just giving us. Yeah.
Not after this week's result, but we won't talk about that. Paul, with your hat on, finishing up here, just aware of time, of your hat on of looking at 80 churches, what are you seeing emerge in this season that we're in?
I think I'm seeing really good signs of health and growth. I think a lot of churches are some are having to take the whole church health thing seriously.
Wow.
So I think movements, I mentioned the Assemblies of God. My friend Derek Smith's just written a book on church health. In there, he and I are very close, and I think movements, them like us, taking on seriously this idea of church health, and not just techniques to grow a Sunday or anything, but having health across whole organization. I think this leaning in again and contending for a move of God is strong. I think in ground level, one of our strengths has always been, and it's getting stronger, I feel, is relational connections across. I just feel that's getting stronger and stronger.
That's relationships of churches with other churches.
Yeah, we do like a Leaders National Forum 3 times a year.
4 times a
4
year.
times a year. And this time, for the first time, that we did 2 hubs. So we did it in Lincoln and we did it in Cambridge.
Yeah.
And just the feel of churches
Amazing.
connecting in a region.
Regional.
Yeah.
So and also being able to establish teams and release people, so we've got a team of three leaders who we say want you to look after Cambridge. So we've got like 15, 16 churches maybe in that whole region, others looking. Like when we do that hub, which is like a 3-hour day of training on a specific theme, like you do that. So we'd love to see, we'll keep Lincoln, and obviously, so now we've got Cambridge, love to see one in northwest.
Okay, nice.
And over there, Wales and West,
Yeah,
maybe even Birmingham.
amazing.
So all of these things are sort of developing
Wow.
more regional, releasing more leaders. I always see a network should be a net where the relationships are not vertical.
Okay, nice.
So it doesn't all come back to me, like the network doesn't exist because I'm amazing or not.
Yeah.
Actually, there's lots of joining points in a net. You're connecting. And so I think
Nice.
that's how we've tried to, we're trying to look at the network and release more gifts from within.
That's so special. And from the little I know of you, Paul, I know we've crossed paths on different fronts, but that strategic brain you've got, when we sat and chatted before, I'm always really encouraged by that strategic brain that you've got. And I think what God's done with you in terms of saving you for a purpose, right? Like not letting you go 4 times to heaven, but for the prayers of the saints around and for your family, but also for this wider net family that you're going to be building. I think I'd be encouraged that over the last 30, 40 years of your strategic brain working is that God's going to place it, dump it in a nation and see many more churches planted, many more churches flourishing, because there are people who are looking to connect. Who are we connecting with?
Yes.
Essentially, we've used the word tribe, but who is our tribe? And I think ground level is a really special movement. So may God bless it more. And
Thank
Nathan, for what you're doing as well, thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thanks, mate. It's been great to have you with us.
How do people find out about Ikon Church and ground level?
So ikon.church online.
Yep.
So it's simple. And then groundlevel.org.uk. That will be the websites.
Well, thanks, boys. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
It's a
Rick.
pleasure. Thank you.
I absolutely loved being part of that conversation, and being with them in person was also a bit of a treat. And so why not go check them out? I hope you were encouraged, and thank you so much for putting this on as one of the podcasts. I know there's loads out there, and essentially I do this because it's a bit of a passion project. And so let me know if it's helped you, or reach out to Paul or Nathan or Jeannie or the team there and let them know as well. I'm sure they'll be super encouraged. Right, have a great rest of your week.